All right, back now with my panel. We've changed the background. It says the final term because this is President Kenyatta's final term. David Osiany is still here, Gabriel Muthuma, Patrick Gadara, and Herman Manyora. We're talking about, can we give a scorecard for President Kenyatta's last cabinet before we move forward? Gabriel.
In fact, I was actually...
Yeah, you were, yes, you were. Yeah, it is a time to speak.
And you really needed to speak on the fact that, you know, we are talking about matters of education, but you didn't finish on that. I think what we need to do as a society, and I'm liking we had a girl here called Goldelin, who has actually taught us a lesson, Larry, and we can never forget that lesson. Somebody who's coming from an era we call, you know, who has an element of disability, actually scoring very well. There is something, and you saw her parents talk about it, there is something right that they have done, which means, Larry, this is not a government issue alone. It needs to have the sophisticates of society in such a way that as we move along, the virtues that society has created are powerful enough to wire her environment so that her growth is supported. And I think we need to do that, from parents to teachers.
So
the entire environment.
No, I'm sorry, Riley.
No. We were talking about education, and I was saying it is not a government initiative alone. There is the parent that come to play. We are talking about religion that come to play. And I was using Goldelin as a case study because we learned
in a private school.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. No, it does not matter. We are talking about an environment. How many other kids? Hang on a minute. How many other kids were in private schools that didn't perform the way she performed?
But that's the point.
There is something inherently.
Exactly.
Listen, there is something. Hang on a minute. There is something inherent that is being done right, and that's what we need to support, Larry. This issue of bashing a system that is trying to sort a problem. Yes, we would like to move forward. We would have to have the best, but there is a starting point, and I think Matiang'i has done very well. Okay. Coming to the final term of the president, that's the question.
Before you go to final Patrick.
I mean, she is the exception that proves the rule. Look at the numbers. You've got 10,000 thereabouts who had 400 points and above.
Yes.
Yeah. And everybody shouts about this. But this is out of a student population of 900.
Almost 1 million.
In all fairness, Patrick, in all fairness, the almost 10,000 people that got 400 marks and above is a big improvement from last year.
Correct.
5,000 more than last year.
It is 5,000 more, but you had 45,000 more students come in. So let's not beat our chest too much. Yeah. The fact is, we had just less than 1% of the student population get 400 points. We shouldn't be looking at that number. That's not the number that matters. The number that matters is the median number.
And
what
to me,
did guys, median, what did the
Larry,
most people get?
There is a starting point. We've had a broken down education system, and we know this, all right? We've had cartels who are actually bringing, and Prof can tell you, changing textbooks every year. We have sorted that. I am not saying we are there yet, but we have a perfect starting point, which we need to come as society to inject vitality and head in the right direction. If we keep bashing the education system, which you know it is improving,
Larry,
all right?
Larry.
You are taking us back to where we were, the era of cartels. And that's why I think it is the right time now. We really move to the final term.
Gabriel is being intellectually dishonest. I would have been very proud if Goldelin first even came from a public school. She is not. The average of students who are in private schools who passed, look, if you went through the 10,000 number of students who got 400 plus, I can almost guarantee you that almost 6,000 of them are from private schools. Does that mean we have done the job? And whereas I said that Dr. Matiang'i has done his fair share in trying to rein in on the cartels in the Ministry of Education, the work to be done is so immense.
Okay. Exactly.
We cannot reduce it to Golden. And
I
Golden
agree.
is not the exhibition, or she doesn't even epitomize how great that section has done. But apart from that, we were trying to look at ministers who've done zilch. And I come to the second one. Do you know Dan Kazungu by name? Do you know him?
The CS Mining?
Do you know him? I know. The guy has no policy direction, no gravitas, no achievement, no PR. At least Matiang'i had some PR. Nothing. What
have you read?
Zero.
Those
are the people I think, that's where the race
has been to the final
term. No, Gabriel, hang on.
Deliver for this country.
David, hang on. Your assessment of President Kenyatta's cabinet for the first time?
Well, like I said before, Larry, really, what do cabinet ministers do?
So, so you don't want to assess them because they don't do anything?
You see, I've given you an example. If somebody gave you a ministry, and assuming you had the capacity, if you try to do that which is right, so long as it doesn't suit what the big boys want, you will not be allowed to do it. But anyway, within those standards, you can say that a few of them have tried.
But why do some cabinet secretaries, having said what you've said, why do some appear to do better than others?
There are two reasons. One, how close you are with the president. Do you have the president's ear and IFB? Yes, that can allow you to perform to some reasonable extent. Secondly, of course, you can't rule out your own abilities as a person. You have the capacity for that job. A great deal of these people don't have capacity. So that again is a problem because it's a reward system. So now the president is going to constitute cabinet. Merit is not going to be the key deciding factor. It is how to balance, how to reward here and there. So when you put all these factors together, then you find that cabinet may not do what it's supposed to do. That's what I'm saying.
I think all kings want to hire ingenious people when all is said and done, Larry. Every king wants to hire an ingenious person. And you must have the stature and you must be able to look the part and do the part. But if you add value, any person will see you for who you are and give you the chance. So proximity is sometimes brought by your abilities.
Well, first of all, Larry, it's our society that demands you must have it balanced. So I think as much as we are talking about meritocracy, I think the president must also look to ensure that everybody is within that framework of balance. And I hope he does. Even when it comes to women, I think they get their fair share. But I think what we are trying to discuss here and what we should not lose sight of is the deliveries. When you come in, probably the president has, and this is what this is my views, the president has a direction. He has a mandate. He says, this is what we want to deliver to the people of Kenya who actually voted us in and those that didn't. He's already reached out to say, we have an agenda and this is why we want to take the country forward. So I have this group of men and women here who are just going to support that which I want to deliver. And I think that's what cabinet ministers will do. It is, again, erroneous to say that they don't have a full hand where they can run and actually be able to deliver. Osiany, it will beat logic. If I give you a job and if I allow you to perform within the context of your framework and then I don't support you, it is actually stupid. If I don't hire you and I don't give you the support that it requires, then it is actually wrong to hire you in the first place. Larry. So I believe the president, I believe the president is out to give you full support, but you have to deliver. At the end of the day, you're not really going to micromanage people. No leader can be able to do that, not even the president himself. Every time he's micromanaging CSS, I don't think that's what it's president. But you have to stand up
the president,
and deliver.
To be quite honest, the president is ultimately responsible for the actions of his CSS. He appoints them, they're his advisors. In the end, if he thinks they're not delivering, it's up to him to crack the whip, get rid of them, get somebody else in who can actually do the job, and he can do this. When he chooses not to, when, for example, he maintained Olelenku, throughout, after Westgate, after all the shenanigans we saw, and he kept him on. He kept Kimayu, on when he could have moved as president to actually try and get Kimayo removed. Although I mean,
he can't fire
him, but he can institute the process where
Kimayo retired.
He was pushed to. But my point is this: is that the president is ultimately responsible for his government. It is his government.
Correct.
And when we look at the failures that are there, we cannot attribute them anywhere else. In the end, other than to him, and he's got to take responsibility for all of it.
Herman.
Gabriel, when you are made a cabinet minister, the things that will happen, the projects and whatever else that goes on, the plans in your ministry, only two things will determine what is done. Political mileage,
right,
or how much money will be made by the big boys in the projects and the plans you undertake in your ministry. If you are made minister in charge of health, and you sat with the president and told him, Mr. President, sir, this free what do you call it?
Free maternal health, yes.
Is rubbish, it's not working. And you told him, the billions we sink into NHIF, this money, plus the monies we are using to hire equipment, it was about 40 billion shillings, something like that. If we put all these resources together, we can improve the healthcare system in this country with a little more brought in, so that you don't need an insurance NHIF, which is where we throw our money. You don't need to lie to Kenyans that there is free maternity when we know what's going on. That Kenyans will access free quality health care, so that in 5 to 10 years, all these private clinics will close Because you can't, why would you go this? There are countries, you know, Kenya sometimes we have a problem. There are countries where you can't, if you open a hospital, nobody will come in. Because the public health care system is functional.
Okay.
So if you told the president that, will he allow you?
And
it's not a popular. It's not a popular idea.
Just to make it very clear, whenever, and I support Paul Gadara in this. See, when the president has the ability to fire and doesn't fire, look at the mess in the health sector. Who was the PS? Muraguri. When Muraguri was involved in a tender in which he has inadvertently given a tender to the president's sister, and it is questioned, what's the punishment he got? Being transferred to another ministry as a PS. So when we look at even the failures, even as I mention names like Dan Kazungu, these are failures which have been allowed by the president. And if he chooses to allow them again, because I don't see anything that signals to me that it's going to be different, then woe unto us. 5 years down the line, we're going to be the same place.
But truth be said, Larry, you will always have failures within your realm. That's a given.
Massive failures are
but to me, what I look is, how are we progressing forward? And when you talk about the final term, what is likely to change? What else are we going to see different? Will they have learned from the failures that they, that happened in his first term? Is he, there are so many things when you talk about both hardware and software issues, which probably I would like to see the president address, like the rampant corruption. I want, and he said it during his speech, inaugural speech.
Except he didn't use the word corruption.
When he said, I mean, among the terms that he used, really just told you accountability. Accountability, things like those. But most importantly, where I want this to sieve down to, it's not only in the national government.
Would he allow you to fight corruption?
Not only in the national government, but down all the way. He's already fired. We saw him fire people in parliament.
You are now a minister. Would he allow you to fight corruption?
Well, how many CSs left, including all these people? Let's just, let's not get it twisted. Let's not get it twisted. But moving forward, Larry, moving forward, what I think we need to, all of us, to ensure that the accountability and responsibility is actually felt is when it goes to devolution. I think that is where the president needs to pump a lot of his weight. Okay, great. Stay with me. I have to take another quick break right now, and we're going to be back in just a moment to discuss the final term of President Uhuru Kenyatta. I think we're going to come back and sneak in a quick sports update for you before we come back. Welcome back. This is Decision 2017, the final one anyway. I think we're going to start calling it the final term, because this is going to be with us for a while. Right now, though, I'm still sitting here with David Osiany, Gabriel Muthuma, Patrick Gadara, and Herman Manyora. We just learned over the last hour that David Ndii, who was Friday appointed to lead the 7-member committee that is pushing for the People's Assembly from NASA, has been arrested in Diani this evening. We don't know a lot of information. NASA saying they don't know where he is. Gentlemen, should we read any more into this arrest? Is it an ordinary arrest? Maybe he committed a crime of some sort, was breaking a law. What do you think?
Larry, the best we can do at this point, just like you've said, is speculate. But I would like to see that, I mean, whatever charge he's been arrested for, I think we expect a due process. That's actually what we should expect. And we get to learn about the charges and then the due process to take place. I don't think there's anything more we can say at this point, unless we learn what those charges are.
I think, Larry, we can't afford to run away from our history and the context within which this is happening. And while it's true that we don't know why he's been arrested, it might be a fully legit reason. But given what has been going on, the way government has comported itself, especially since August, the fact that we've had Jubilee people talking about the institution of a benevolent dictatorship, all this is cause for real concern, I think. And I think we need to be quite worried that we might be seeing the beginnings of a clampdown, on things, on people saying things that the president doesn't like or that government doesn't like. Actually, I wouldn't even say the beginning. That's the wrong side. It's been happening since August. We've been seeing people being killed for this, being beaten up for this. So I think we can't run away from that context. I think it really behoves us to keep a real strict eye on what's going on and to hold the people who've arrested him to account and to get proper explanations about why he's in. And if it does turn out that this is sort of a spurious reason to simply either harass him or to shut him up, I think people from across the divide should really come together and say that this should not be, this is not the Kenya we want.
Am I surprised that David Ndii is arrested? No, I am not. I'd only be surprised if I hadn't seen the little baby shot, 7-year-old. Even though police would later tell us that that was because, you know, done by someone who was a pedestrian. How quick they're able to resolve and investigate that when to date scores have been killed and buried and we don't know. Am I shocked he's been arrested? No, I wouldn't be shocked if I hadn't seen how the government has been dealing with the civil society and trying to infringe and really shut down the space, the democratic space. Am I shocked that Ndii is arrested? I am not. The final term begins. It's just that way. I don't know whether he's arrested because of political reasons, but I bet, and all of us may, that that is the reason. But there's something about people like Ndii. They have seen it all. They have borne it all. That can only radicalize them more. It's like grabbing Raila Odinga, who has a grandchild, who has had himself named after so many, and telling them, we are going to lock you up. What are you going to do for him in the history? Because this is not the first time Ndii is being arrested. Ndii was incarcerated under the Moi regime. He saw Moi at his worst. He would probably handle Uhuru Kenyatta a little lighter. So what I think needs to happen, if the president really wants to bring together the country, as he said, then for whatever reason Ndii is arrested now, it doesn't seem right for the country at this point. A country that
even if he was breaking the law.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if he was breaking the law.
Was the law broken? Osiany, we need to be clear.
Larry,
was the law broken?
Well,
we don't know. Larry, at this point, we don't know.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Larry, that's brilliant.
Gabriel, it's like you saying,
fine.
were you shocked when Moses Kuria was arrested?
Just
were
a
you
minute.
shocked when Muthuma was arrested? I mean,
My
if they broke the law,
problem is,
let the due process of the law
what
take
is
place.
David Ndii's history? His history is transformational and revolutionary. Would there be a legitimate reason to arrest him?
So revolutionists
Maybe.
don't break the law?
Would
I
there
know,
be-
that's a
Would
very
there
simple
be-
argument.
Listen, I've just
Osiany.
used the maybe, Gabriel. I know you want to distort
No,
this train of
I'm
thought.
not distorting.
I have to put it across.
All right.
Would there be a legitimate reason to arrest David Ndii? Maybe. And I say that maybe sarcastically. Maybe. Should there be a reason that's legitimate, we want to hear it tomorrow. But all factors have been pointed
out.
We don't know.
Don't we have government, police
don't
spokespeople,
Larry,
and they
because
do know
this is
that
our interest.
this sort of thing does create tension, does
Larry, we
get
don't
people
know.
talking.
Okay.
So
And
government should
and
be
by the
out
way,
there
Larry,
explaining.
it's not only the
Saying,
police.
listen,
It's not only the police.
Gabriel may be
We
right.
have IPOA.
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You may be right. Maybe David Ndii was the mastermind behind the thicker theft. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
50 million. The guy is
Yeah.
so ugly.
Yeah, probably was doing
As
that
we
one.
sit here, we don't know. He's not an angel. He's an ordinary human being.
Correct.
Except I'm a little worried that he can be held
Yeah.
when he's enjoying with his family, whatever he was doing, and they cannot reach him, lawyers cannot reach him, Norman Magaya cannot reach him. When we know very well, big thieves who steal billions are driven to the Integrity Center,
Right.
Yes.
and they walk out for the cameras. Tuck, 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 tuck. What Miguna calls the revolving doors, and life is no more.
Yeah.
But what I will tell government is this: if they are trying to harass Ndii and arrest him because of what's going on in NASA, then that would be bad and unfortunate. Why? Because if you are telling people to move on, you don't move on when you arrest people who are key in the opposition.
But Prof, don't you
That's
think?
only one way of moving on.
Don't you think we are preempting the investigation?
come on.
We started there.
Let's
We started
wait.
there.
Let's
Gabriel,
wait
we
and
have
see the
resolved-
investigation.
We have resolved
No.
that preemption that you want us to believe. We have already said
Let
that
me-
should there be.
Exactly.
Why are you so busy
I'm
trying
not
to
busy.
distort this other train
By the
of
way,
thought?
let me tell you,
Prof
I
is saying
am not defending.
we
I'm
are-
not defending the
hang on,
police.
David.
I'm not
Yes.
defending the police. Neither am I defending David Ndii because we do not know the reason as to why he was arrested. That's what I'm saying. We have.
But
we
here's
have.
the point: is why
This-
I think
Gabriel
Gabriel is making a legitimate point.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I
we
think
cannot
Gabriel has a
defend-
legitimate
we
point in
cannot
this
defend-
argument.
You are defending David Ndii as
Larry.
if you know
Larry,
what he has done,
Larry.
and yet you do not know.
Okay,
Larry,
but-
what I'm calling for
Okay,
is
that's
we
enough.
wait,
Rest.
we wait, let the investigation
even-
be
Let's
conducted.
all go there.
And
Hang on,
let
hang on,
us-
hang on,
Let
hang on.
us learn as to why he was arrested.
Yes.
What's
Okay,
wrong with
okay.
waiting?
But my question
Patrick.
here is knowing, and government knowing that this was bound to get things working and people, why is it that we don't know why he's been arrested?
Exactly.
Why do we pay police spokespeople? Isn't it that at this point they should be out there telling us
This
this
is the
is
reason.
why we have done it. This is what it's about. That's why they dissipate this cloud of suspicion that is inevitable, that it will come.
Okay.
Yes.
So and I think that if we had a government that was more keen, more attuned to actually explaining to people, to actually being accountable to the people it rules over, then it should be the first one to come out and say, we've arrested him, this is why.
Understanding the amount
I don't
of
want
attention
to dwell so much on a situation for which we have little information.
Just quick to finish. Understanding the amount of attention that this draws, Muthuma. You cannot just kick this out of the door.
No, let it calm down the hierarchy of command, for crying out loud.
Osiany, talking, Muthuma,
but you see, you are regurgitating around the same point. Let it calm down from the command. Let it come down from the hierarchy of command. It was a local police probably who arrested him. The police by nature are not allowed. Most of them are not allowed to talk to the media.
Now that you are done, let me talk.
So let it come to the people who will explain to the media.
And understanding the amount of attention that this attracts and understanding how key a cog in NASA's wheel Ndii has been, it is incumbent on the government, because they know that if this had to happen, then everyone like myself and others would believe it for what it is, which we will establish tomorrow, and you will come and you know, I know you know. So they should have first explained that we are arresting him under these circumstances. So don't you dare think, because this only infuriates a country that's already tattered. And this is a president making a commitment to move the country forward.
David,
is this the way forward?
David, all right, that's enough. I think we're going to move away from the subject of David Ndii.
It's unfortunate. It's all right.
This was David Ndii, by the way, at the launch, I think one of the NASA event back in January. Jackson, if you could bring this up. And he, hang on, so one of my texts on the screen. Okay, we don't have the screen. That's David Ndii giving a presentation at a NASA event back, I think that was the 11th January. And he gave a very detailed, I think it's almost 15 minutes. Okay. Now, Junaid Mohammed, the ODM Director of Elections, just confirming that the police have not confirmed that they have arrested. While they're speculating, nobody knows whether he's dead or alive. Junaid Mohammed, classic Junaid Mohammed, I guess I should say.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to move away from the subject of David Ndii and conclude with my panel. President Kenyatta said in his inauguration address, we've had a very long election season, 123 days, and said repeatedly that this marks the end of the electoral process. Gabriel, do you agree?
Actually, so, I mean, the truth of the matter is, you know, we may like talking politics, but truth to the fact, the elections have come to an end. Now it's the development agenda. And it's not only the president, by the way, Larry. You're talking about governors and elected leaders, senators, the MPs and MCAs. They need to get back to work and be able to deliver the promises that they gave to the common mwananchi. And so that scenario must change. We would like probably to sit down and, you know, gallivant or talk about what will happen, what is happening, the cabinet, but there is an agenda. People need an element of moving forward. And I know many people don't like hearing that, moving forward, but it is a process. We must move forward. And according to what the president said is that he has mentioned several things, that I'm going to reach out to this. I am going to continue with my development agenda. We've already seen some of the few things taking shape, like the dams, one in Kirinyaga and one in Ukambani. There are some of the things I think he wants to, you know, to endear himself and move. And he mentioned very correctly that, you know, when we are talking about development, it is people-oriented. When we are talking about the seats that we are talking about here, you know, who gets what, the power, who sits on what seat, that is actually politicals who are actually driving that, you know, that force. A while ago, our good friend Larry was reading to us how people are lobbying. And that's why it just shows you the people who are lobbying now are the people who want positions. But for the common mwananchi, he needs development. They need development. He or she, you know, Wanjiko, you know, has been given so many promises, not only by the president, but by the local leadership. Right. And that is the environment that we would start welcoming. If you ask me, and to answer your question in simple terms, I think the electioneering year period has come to an end.
Patrick?
I think there is a sense in which it has officially come to an end, in the sense that you've got somebody who's been inaugurated as president, but it still hasn't. You still have disputes that go on, and I don't think we should bury our heads in the sand and simply say that because we've gone through this inauguration, then what NASA says ceases to matter. You know, they still represent a huge a proportion of this country, a huge part of it that we shouldn't ignore. But more importantly, what I don't like is a sense of let us move on away from discussing the election. Because if there's one thing we should have learned from what's just happened, is that we learned nothing from 2007. You know, that the problems that bedeviled the electoral system then are still with us today. That we are not actually fixing it. And what I would have hoped the president would do was to acknowledge that the fact that we've got these huge disputes going on, we've got 70 plus people dead out of an electoral system, is something we should not accept. That let's sit down and work out what is wrong and take this electoral system apart, all the way from how we register people to how we determine petitions. The entire process, take it apart, rebuild it anew so that it actually works for us. So we have a situation where people who lose elections don't think that they have been cheated out of them. Everybody accepts the ground rules, and the ground rules are actually stuck to. And I think that when the president said in his speech, in his inauguration speech, he talks of leaving behind the baggage of the past. We can't wish that baggage away, Mr. President. You've got to sit and lead a process that deals with why we have that baggage, And it's going to be uncomfortable. A lot of it is going to lead to questioning about how you yourself became president. But it is something that needs to be done if the country is to actually move forward. I don't buy this idea that we can bribe people with development, quote unquote, so that they forget injustice. If they see injustice, we've got to deal with why they perceive injustice, whether you agree whether it's real or not, why they perceive it. Okay. Once you deal with that, then you can actually have a united country that can go forward, rather than simply telling people accept and move on.
Prof, is the election season over?
Of course, the election is over. Somebody has been sworn in, and he must be allowed to do the thing he's supposed to do as president. Muthuma has told us correctly, perhaps, that Jubilee has his agenda. But very unfortunately for this country, and I think for Muthuma and his friends, no agenda can be actualized before you fix the politics. You cannot have meaningful development. You cannot pursue any agenda meaningfully before you fix the politics. So in our case, what is fixing the politics? The country is divided like never before. That around 50%, when I say 2/3, people don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm just saying a big chunk of this country is saying they are not willing to move on. You cannot ignore that. That's part of the politics in this country. And unless you fix that politics, there is no development that can succeed in this country. You must fix the politics. Look at the people who are divided. Do they have, who are against what's going on? Do they have a genuine concern? Is the opposition to be taken serious when they say they will not move on with you? Is there a need to re-examine a number of things, some of them very difficult, some of them very ugly? Is it time for us to sit down as a country and say, look here, we seem not to be heading the right direction. Just hold on a moment. Can we discuss and see? Let's discuss everything. And I've always said this since this thing happened. I said, look here, so long as we agree the president has been sworn in and that is not debatable, anything else can be discussed, including really, do we want to move to 2022? With all this anger, when I say anger, people say, Manyora, people are not angry. There are parts of this country where there is really anger, really anger. And you cannot pretend to be moving on with such a huge population of the country, this angry. You may even succeed to make them quiet. But my friend, if you look at history, when people have had the kind of anger I think people in this country have, but they are forced to keep quiet, when it erupts, the country is gone. So it's good that we fix the politics. Part of that is asking some very, very disturbing questions.
Why are you addressing this to Muthuma?
Yeah, I'm wondering. Because he's ally.
No. It's the
only friend I have on this table.
And by the way, but go.
Let David speak first, yes.
David, go.
You see, Larry, confidence is only seen in conduct. So if you're confident about yourself, then how you carry yourself around will tell us whether you're confident or not. If I am a man, I don't need to stand and remind people in my speech, remember, I am a man. The fact the president has to remind the country in his speech that the electoral cycle is finished is itself a problem. As a student of communication, it means that he knows there's so much unresolved. He can only latch on the hope that we are not going to get onto this. Trouble is, we are in a... The thing is, legally, the electoral cycle is over. Legally. There is no recourse for anyone who wants to go into another election. But when, in countries where the electoral systems and the electoral management has been captured by the state, historically, countries have found ways around those elections because then they don't matter to them. The questions we need to be dealing with is, if a commissioner quits midway and says that there are problems, do we just wish it away and say this was one for NASA, or do we look at what she says and find whether it's valid? In the history of the US, before they ran away from being a monarchy, they ran away from being a monarchy because the monarchy had shown that elections did not matter anymore. Even if you look at our neighboring Uganda, Obote had made it look like elections were not a way of acquiring political power, leading to a senior intelligence officer in Museveni heading to the bush and later coming to recapture power. That has been the case in Zimbabwe, where Mugabe had shown people that you cannot capture political power through an electoral process. And so, whereas the electoral cycle is over, and legally so, when the apartheid could not give way for an electoral process, a legitimate electoral process, agreeably, in South Africa, Mandela and friends found a way around it.
Okay.
So, yes, the electoral cycle is over. But do we need to relook at why we are where we are? Because we are a fragile state. That's the truth. A country whose more than half are pained. Even if we let them stay quiet, what you have is calm, but not peace. Yeah. And still waters, there's a reason sages declared still waters run deep. And like Manyora says, when those still waters eventually erupt, they are irredeemable. So should the president reach out and make amends with the prime minister? In fact, I would have thought it wise. I don't know who advises the president. Maybe he should hire me and pay me heftily. Because he should have driven... No, I'm a commander, whatever. He should have walked himself to the home of Raila Odinga, even without warning, and talked to him and told him, my brother, I come in peace. What may we do for this country? But the sense of entitlement that my brother Muthuma and friends are telling him, you know, it's over, let's move on. No. We cannot move on. We cannot benumb our conscience and lie to ourselves that things are good when we sit on the precipice and we are going to topple.
Larry, I was just listening.
Is Raila always home?
About this guy.
The president has head of intelligence in this country.
The president, give it to him.
Sorry,
the president has already reached out. And I mean, we've covered it when he said the president already, put the olive branch and told my brother, come we talk. Come we talk. He said that many times. Anyway, he said
it publicly. That
Larry, what were the words of the president?
By the way, Osiany, the problem with you cherry pick a lot on very small issues. I don't cherry pick.
I'm a student of literature and communication.
Larry has just told you.
No,
the president has said publicly he's appealing to everybody who competed with him to come forward. I was just telling him to build the nation.
Paul Otuoma and
Ojamong out.
Larry, I was just talking to supporters of both Paul Otuoma and Ojamong, and I can tell you, most of them were so divided. In any election, even in Central, even in Rift Valley. If you look at the supporters that were, on Buzeki's side, and those that were on Mandago, they were divided, very divided. And some were saying, you know what, if he's not my governor, he's not my MP. We need to collectively understand that elections in this country will always have...
You must give me a minute. You will talk about this narrative.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. We will always have a divided...
you must give me a minute.
You get a minute, please, Prof.
We will always have a divided nation during the electioneering period. But we must find, and I'm not saying we just, bury everything under the fluffy rag of saying we have peace, or, we say there is justice. No, that's not what I'm advocating. But what I'm advocating is we must be able to understand when the times and the requirements of our society of what they demand.
What?
One, The demand that is there right now, even if it's not a matter of moving forward, is that we have a country, all right?
To fix.
And this country, whether it's to fix or
It's
not,
to fix.
hang on
No,
a
no,
minute.
don't editorialize what he's saying.
We have a country.
He was doing that to
First
me.
and foremost, we have a nation. Then in comes the people who feel they've been left out. We have a system that we need to fix, whether it's IEBC. And this is something that we have struggled with for 10 years. That is why I keep saying, Larry, we were given a blueprint by Kriegler and team. We have failed to work on this. And I agree with you on that.
We've ignored it?
And it is not like at one point Kibaki and Raila did not have that blueprint. That is something they should have started working on. The issue that we are coming to an election and you're talking about changing the commission is wrong in itself. What they would have done is that, my friend, the two people, the president and the prime minister, I thought they should have saved that, all these shenanigans we are finding. They would have said, we have been given this blueprint. We nearly burnt our country. What we need to do, we must start talking about maximum, no longer minimum reforms. And at that particular time, if we were talking back 10 years, trust me, comprehensive, we would have gotten. We would have gotten.
You have
and we would not have gotten.
David,
no, I just want him to agree.
David,
he finally agrees that the elections are a problem in this country.
It took, and what I'm saying,
it
took from a President Kibaki and the Prime Minister the fact that they did not put or inject the amount of strength and your political goodwill that was required. That is why we are here today.
Fair enough.
But
So
let us allow now, since we know there is a problem, all right, we have a parliament. We have the Senate. We have institutions that actually can be geared to work on this particular process.
Thank you,
and we should give them the time.
Gabriel, are the differences between the governance followers the same as the differences between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga?
This is why we shall get into a problem in this country, by missing the point, like he's missing. There's a very common narrative, especially from your side. Elections are divisive, correct. Losing an election is painful. Whenever you lose something like a loved one through death, you lose an election, there is a period of grieving. Those stages of grief, they've been well articulated by psychologists and other people. That is true. And when Ojamong and Muthuma are in a context and one wins, the loser will be bitter, but at some point, they will have a county called Busia to take care of. There will be another election in 2022. That's where you get it wrong. This time round, at the national level, we are dealing with a monster. We are not dealing with a side that has lost, is going through the normal motion of loss and grieving. No. We have a side that has said, this time, no. This time, no. This is the end of electoral fraud. We are not going to be part of this country if this is what we are going to do going forward. Sure. This is a serious matter that nobody should take lightly by saying when people lose, they feel bitter, then later they come together. This is a serious matter. It has destroyed countries. We must not allow it to destroy.
I mean, hang on, Gabriel.
I was finishing because it's a dangerous narrative. We must not take this thing as ordinary loss. The moment Raila withdrew from the election on the 10th of October, this country ought to have stopped and asked serious questions. We didn't. We thought we could hurry. My friend, we could be hurrying to our own destruction.
Let me tell Gabriel. Gabriel, just a minute.
Let him respond to what the prof said, and then we'll give you David. David, hang on. David, hang on. Right. Let him respond, and then you'll have a final say.
In fact, Prof, what I agree with you is that we need to sit down. But it is us to open up that facility of us sitting down. We've allowed politicians for far, far too long, Larry, to dictate how this country should be moved forward. And you gave a very good example about the United States. But guess what? Donald Trump still lost by about 3 million in the grand scheme of things. But America has moved forward because of the facility of a country. They know we have a nation that we need to move forward. But it's not a wrong impression. I am telling you, Kenya comes first. And you know, we may argue as much as you want.
Respond to what I said. Respond to what I said.
And when you're talking about people not feeling being part, we have an institution, Larry, and this one, please get it clear. We have an institution that we should make use of.
and this is Parliament.
Oh, God.
All right?
Then you have missed it badly.
If it's
You can't argue
bro,
that.
bro, unless you want us to get this thing outside Parliament, and we look for another ordinary, we look for another place to work on it, and it is wrong. I will never support, bro. I will never support anything that we do outside the confines of Parliament.
Okay.
And by the way,
Gentlemen, we're all talking at the same time.
Remember, you see. The problem we are in, Larry, wait. I'm giving you facts. And those are facts.
No, sir, you need to make your point faster. I have to go.
And if, by the way, if I deviate from facts, then point me to it. We are in this place, Larry, because we took a political angle when dealing with IEBC.
All right.
We went out throwing stones and we had
Gabriel.
something that we came up with called a legal political bypass, and we had people in office.
Okay.
Had we done that which was within our constitution,
Fine,
we would
Gabriel.
have been in safe place.
Great.
Fine,
Patrick, then
Gabriel,
David.
I hear you. But I mean, I think you do sort of contradict yourself when you say that for far too long we've let politicians run this, and then you're saying let's leave it to politicians in Parliament to deal with it.
Yeah.
What I agree with you is that yes, we need comprehensive discussion, but this comprehensive discussion is not going to be done in Parliament. Exactly. One of the things that we should always remember happened in 1997 with the IPPG was how IPPG essentially undercut the push for reform, because the reform movement was outside of Parliament, was pushing the state to change. And what Moi did was to take its momentum, ensconce it within the state, and essentially cut out that agenda. That's how we ended up with our gentleman's agreement that Kibaki threw out in 2007. You know? So we need to learn our lessons and to say that this is not a process to be done inside of the state. It's got to be done outside of it. You know, we've got to sit in Kenyans in their collectiveness.
Okay.
Where you're getting me wrong.
No, not Gabriel. No.
So Kenyans in their collectiveness, whether they are MPs and politicians, or they are mamambogas, or they are professional institutions, you know, and stuff, we get Kenyans as a totality to sit down and discuss this thing we call elections. What is it? And I think going a bit further, it should be this thing we call the state, because the elections are run by this thing called the state and run on the infrastructure created by this state that we inherited from the colonials, and that, as the TJRC report says, we failed to change.
All right.
No, I just needed to correct something. I needed to correct something you said.
No, hang on, Gabriel, you had your chance. Gabriel, you had your chance. You had your chance, Gabriel. David.
Let me say, Gabriel, you understand too well, and this is why this moving on, let's get it over with, cannot work, and it must not work, and we must urge the president, now that he's been sworn in, against the backdrop of both judicial and empirical proof that there were problems with the election. This is it, my friend. 1992, even after Matiba was rigged out by Moi, and it was written, and people may argue with it, but it was a close contest, there was nowhere during the swearing in of Moi that there were chaos in the country. Same as 97. For the first time, you have a country where swearing in of one president is going on and the shooting and killing of others goes on in the other parts of the country. It cannot be acceptable. It means the country is torn apart. How are we going to fix it? We must fix it. You're telling us to take this to the parliament that recently passed laws that are retrogressive, electoral laws that are retrogressive in nature, that sought to have any other judge that wanted to bypass.
Retrogressive in what sense?
Relax. Why would they change what is anchored on the Constitution, Gabriel? And you cannot tell me that if you read the reforms that were being sought by Parliament, you find them extremely progressive, that there is no need for a Chief Justice to swear in the president. Relax.
Was it a illegality?
Relax, my friend.
Was it a illegality?
What they did was not an illegality, but the end result.
Did they do something wrong?
Hang on a minute.
Gabriel, hang on.
The end result is illegal all the same. The process may be valid. The end result is illegal. And that is why I am calling on the President Uhuru Kenyatta, because I know he's watching, and I'm calling him to calm down his horses and have a meeting point with the leader of the opposition.
By the way,
because if we do
the president has actually
relax, my friend.
He has said he said
the fronts of conflict metastasize with time. So today we are handling the conflict of what will happen on the 12th. But tomorrow when the 12th arrives, the conflict will have become something entirely different. This is the time to grab it, nip it at its bud, sit down and say, hey, we have a problem and I agree. That's the first set of brief. and tell the Prime Minister, what may I do so that you and your people can feel part of this government? Until that is done, we are going in circles and it will catch up
One
with
last thing,
us.
please. Don't reduce this to a discussion between Uhuru
Exactly.
and Raila.
No.
This has to be a
let him make his point.
national discussion. And where I would agree with you, yes, they can sit down and discuss what forum would create for that.
Exactly.
That is fine. But the discussion has to be had by all sections of society sitting together, and that is what we ran away from in '97. And the past is not through with us. We've got to deal with our issues. And the problem with Kenya is for far too long we keep running away from our issues, not dealing with them. The thing you're talking about, minimum reform rather than comprehensive reform, is how we've always dealt with things. We're just trying to get past the current crisis.
Exactly.
Not fix
Instead of
the
fixing
problem.
it
And that is what I said. That is why I asked
It's come to bite
for maximum reforms. And the minute we start engaging on those lines, I think we'll be headed somewhere. The basic tenet that you actually talked about Parliament is this. I do not want us to reduce Parliament, and say, we can talk outside the parentheses of our constitution. It would be wrong. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute.
Parliament is just one forum.
No,
Parliament is one forum that has
but
abused
at the end of the
itself.
day, at the end of the day,
place that
the
has
laws that
abused
will
its
come out of
sacredness.
Parliament, you can't
Our
say
laws
that.
will-
No,
you
it
can't-
is
you-
true.
You
Hang
can't,
on,
you can't
David.
say that. It is wrong, because if you're saying we go out there, make laws,
we-
and then
Oh, no.
how at the end of the day,
Gabriel,
Larry, we will come back to Parliament.
Gabriel,
Let's get this
Gabriel,
right.
have we
Am I
not
right,
had a
Professor?
history?
And I know you
Gabriel,
will support
Gabriel.
this. This issue of you saying people, I agree, there needs to be discussion. Uhuru, President, needs to
But
reach
Gabriel,
out to the common Mwananchi, to Njigo,
Gabriel, one
but
last
at the
thing
end
for
of the day,
Parliament.
whatever we discuss out there will be ratified in Parliament.
Obviously.
And I know,
Gabriel, you're going in circles, but you
No,
know
it's
you're
not
not
going in
communicating.
circles.
Patrick has a question.
You are
Gabriel,
just failing to
Gabriel,
understand what I'm saying.
Yes, Patrick.
Gabriel, again, if you look at the history of our country, we've had many times when we've had discussions outside of Parliament.
And I agree.
Agreed the things that Parliament should pass, and then
brought
voted
them back
Parliament
to be ratified.
passed them.
I agree.
So it's not that we go outside the ambit of the Constitution when we have discussions outside of Parliament. Parliament is just one place where you
Right.
can have discussions. You can have other forums, you can create other forums. Nothing in the Constitution stops this. The point is, have a forum where everybody can participate, where one party does not lord it over everybody else. And don't forget, this was the discussions that we had in '97, after the '92 elections, because KANU was insisting, have it in Parliament, because they had the numbers in Parliament.
Yes.
And we were all saying, no, let's have it outside, and then Parliament will legislate what we agree on. So that is a model that we can use. We can sit down.
And that has been done. That
utilize
has been
it.
done.
And
That
that
has
is
been
the
done many
model.
times.
That is the model on which the People's Assembly, I bet, is predicated. It may be called something else, but I
No,
think
actually,
the sense
IPPG
it may be
did not do
predicated.
that. IPPG took it to
Alright.
Parliament.
Yes, exactly. That's a problem.
2016,
That's why we need to have a
did
conversation.
mini IPPG again. So and that's why we just keep getting caught up with these politicians leading it.
Yes.
Have it outside, where everybody can participate,
Right.
as we did with bombers.
Yes.
And then we took a constitution to Parliament and told Parliament pass this.
The only trouble there is, Patrick,
that I
the only
agree with
trouble
what
is
Patrick
that
said.
comes back.
I agree with what he said. And if you had me, this guy kept interrupting me, that's what I was
I
saying.
think you've had sufficient time, Gabriel.
He kept interrupting, but
don't
I
sit
agree.
next to each other.
I agree with what he's saying. We
Okay.
can remove the debate, and once we have come up with this is the way, at the end of the day, it is the people who will say how they want to be governed.
Fantastic.
And then you bring it out to Parliament,
Fantastic.
and it is ratified.
Fantastic.
Parliament has had wonderful ideas brought before it. And when Patrick says we have to, the reason I said that Raila and Uhuru must lead this and come to an agreement, it's because they will be the ultimate voices of the two divided sections. We can go on and have our meetings and have people's assemblies and whatever. The only way to channel that to a meaningful and logical conclusion is by having these two gentlemen talk, because they're the ones in control of Parliament that will then achieve passing it if it were needed.
No, I
Let me
disagree
tell you,
with that.
Patrick.
That's like
Muduma-
saying
Muduma
if
agrees
everybody
with
now
this.
subscribes to both
No.
Raila and President
Patrick, you will
we
have
have
to
so
agree
many
with
other
me
people within
that
Kenya
if
who
we
actually
came
are
and
not part
discussed
of
like
the
we did with
and
our
NASA.
Gabriel, Gabriel, hang on.
If we came and did as we did with the Constitution and delivered it to Parliament, and Uhuru Kenyatta says, I'm using my tyranny not to discuss that issue in Parliament, however much the pressure, it will be work in vain.
Okay.
Now that is where the political comes and
All right.
merges with the people and the citizens.
Okay, Prof.
At least in my opinion.
I want to say this as we close. I'm sure
Yes.
we are now close.
Yes, I gotta go.
I have not seen this thing coming out clearly, that this country's got a big problem. Right? You get it? That must be the starting point to appreciate the magnitude of the problem. If we do not do that, we are likely to give this thing casual treatment. Oh, when shall we talk? Who will be in the top? How important is Raila in the discussion? Should it involve all Kenyans or what? That is not appreciating the magnitude of the problem. Right? We must begin by appreciating that no country I know of, there could be others, that has had a problem such as ours and scattered over issues and then survived.
None.
Because I want to remind you, I don't know whether you got it, for the first time in our history, we have issues of legitimacy, where a section of the country says they do not recognize the government as constituted. That is a big problem. No country has walked out of that by closing its eyes. You must discuss that, and I have said, allow me 1 second to repeat, that the discussions on table, other than the fact that Uhuru is already president, must allow anything to be discussed, including whether or not, Muthuma, we should have elections earlier than 2022.
Let's say one last thing.
I'm saying it could be one of those to discuss.
In response to what you said about taking it to Parliament and having these two forces, Raila and Uhuru being the people pushing it, you've got to remember that in the late 90s, after 97, we had, I mean, the People's Assembly isn't something new. NCC had set up a constituent assembly to review the constitution outside the ambit of the state. You know, and it was actually because they went forward and continued doing it that the state came and said, all right, we will pass a law and let's try and merge these two processes. You know, so it is nothing that stops us from going out and doing it. And actually the act of doing it will it itself put pressure on the state, you know, to come. And I think the pressure on the state shouldn't come from the two politicians, comes from the totality of Kenya, so the civil society of
Gabriel, we can't start afresh.
No, I'm not starting afresh. I'm just supporting the idea. I'm just supporting the idea that even if you look at Bunge la Mwananchi, that is the same thing that they've done. So I am not disagreeing.
So Bunge la Mwananchi, hang on. Bunge la Mwananchi, Gabriel. Bunge la Mwananchi, aka the People's Assembly?
No. What they've done. No, I'm not reducing. I've gone to barazas where they have, and they are like, what are the issues
we can't end on that note. When you create serious things with Bunge la Mwananchi, which is...
Let me say this.
What are the social issues?
No, gentlemen,
when all is said and done.
Issues?
No way,
You've not even attended a Bunge la Mwananchi. What are the social issues that are here? And then they bring this to Parliament. They've done it. So I agree with you, Patrick.
That's it.
When all is said and done, if we reduce the import of what we are going through now, and the gravity of what Kenya is going through today, the way Gabriel wants to scat over it and, and make it look like some tiny little thing that will go away, then I guarantee you without shadow of a doubt, it will boomerang on Kenya. It may not boomerang now, but it will. It has in many countries. You may not have it. You may not have the advantage immediately. But it will boomerang.
Gabriel, that's it. We have to leave it there, Prof. You're the oldest one here, so you get the final 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Please take this issue seriously. If you talk about, oh, we assemble people, Bunge la Wananchi, what.
I was just giving an example.
And the 12th is coming, and another day is coming, and the Kenyans are continuously dying, and this country can burn. This is a serious issue. It requires urgent attention. It requires the goodwill of all Kenyans. But more importantly, it requires that the president appreciates the magnitude of the problem.
Prof, this is not the first time that people have contested the presidency. I remember after 2013, a lot of people said, not my president.
Yes.
But
it wasn't this bad.
The badness, the degree of badness.
We should finish by this. Kenya won't ban.
Great. Let's leave it there.
Only
We can-
if it is fixed.
Let's
Only
put
if
it
it is fixed.
Gentlemen, you can't keep doing this.
If it is
We're
not
ending.
fixed,
David, no.
we have
If
No,
this
David.
country is not
This
fixed,
David, Gabriel,
then it will
Patrick,
go to the
Herman.
dogs burning.
That's
I
it.
don't want
Gentlemen,
Kenya
no.
won't
Kenya
we
will
have
not
enough
burn.
brains.
We're
Kenya
gonna take a
will not
break right
burn,
now.
but
It
Kenya
will
may
not.
end up being
David and
ungovernable.
Patrick. David and
And
Patrick.
the economic,
No, David,
shred of this
David,
country
David,
will tear into pieces.
David, that's it. That's
not what we
enough.
want.
Let's leave
we
it
want
there.
a united nation.
We
President
are-
Kenyatta act.
No. I will not invite you back if you keep doing
Don't
this.
invite this guy back. Don't invite him.
We can't have the situation happening, David.
Don't bring him in.
All right.
We love this
I
guy.
love Kenya. It's my passion for the
David
We love this
Osiany,
country.
Gabriel Muthuma, Patrick Gadara, and Herman Manyora, thank you so much for coming
Thanks, Larry,
on
for having us.
tonight.